Call for apologies. We have one from Neville Cook. That's the only apology. It's moved by Jeremy, seconded by Lyndall. In favour, say aye. Aye. Declarations of interest. I haven't been made aware of any this afternoon. Public forums, petitions and reputations. Not aware of any today. So we'll move to item 5, which is the confirmation of minutes for the ordinary meeting of council 27th of September. There any alterations we made?
Even a spelling error on page 5. Spelling of navigational. I can change that. Yeah.
Good spelling, always good to have an English teacher in the room. Any further changes? If not, would somebody like to move the amended version? Is a true and correct record? Moved by Phil. Seconded by Jeremy. Any further discussion? I will put the motion. All in favour will say aye. Aye. Right. Item 6, notification of extraordinary urgent business. Not aware of any this afternoon. Questions? I haven't been made aware of any for this meeting. Not missed anything. Chairman and councillors' reports. Probably most of us did that this morning at the other meeting, so I haven't got anything more to report. Nobody else. Right, we'll move to item 9. And item 1 is the adoption of the 2023 annual report and annual report summary, which starts on page 8. So I'll hand over to Tanya and the team to see if he wants to make a comment. And I want to have had a couple of looks at it, but he probably hasn't. So.
Thank you, Chair. Good photo. Yes, as the Chair has indicated, the purpose of the item today is for Council to adopt the 2022 to 23 annual report and the annual report summary. First, I guess before we get into the recommendations, just want to thank everyone who's been involved in putting together the annual report this time around. The devil is in the details, and yeah, it's been a great team effort to get this together. So recommendations today, Council considers the content of both of the documents and through any further explanation or information required, resolve to number 1, pursuant to section 98 Local Government Act 2002, report 2022 to 23, and the annual report summary 2022 to 23. And the second recommendation is to request the Chairman and Chief Executive to sign the financial statements and associated documents reporting to the auditors. By way of a quick background to how we've got how the item has come to today's meeting, was the draft annual report and annual report summary was considered at the Risk and Assurance Committee meeting on the 4th of October. The auditor, in representation of the auditor Anthony Smith of Deloitte, was present and took the committee through the findings of the report. Following in it to enable the committee to indicate any changes to be made and in follow-up have amended the report content as advised. And now present the draft report and annual report summary. A key piece that the auditor indicated at that committee meeting was to complete the audit process requires the adoption of both the annual report and the annual report summary, and adds the signing of the verification.
Thanks for that. Are there any questions or comments? I'm aware this has been to the risk committee, but not everybody's probably had another look since the first time we looked at it. So Tanya.
Sorry, Chair, I didn't mean to interrupt. I was wanting to add to Dave's.
Oh, yes,
commentary.
no, go for it.
The operating surplus reported share is 8.26 million. Above budget, as we've reported, we started the year with a budget of operating deficit of 2.4 million budgeted. With the return of the marine fee that we couldn't budget on earlier in the season, the government income that can only be used for climate resilience projects, the unrealised investment income, we have returned a surplus, as I said, greater than originally budgeted. When we look at the cash components of our reported surplus, take out the non-cash items, the transfer to reserve, which allows us to start rebuilding the marine fee, we're actually left with a surplus of only $300,000 in cash. I just want to point that out, that accounting is an interesting science, and that it certainly is not a surplus of 8.26 million. Other than that, Chair, I'd like to recommend the financial statements to you.
No, thanks for that, Tanya, and I think it's a very good point to make. It's also the fact that the staff worked really hard to try and stay within or below their budgets, and it's a credit to the organisation. You often see government departments running around making sure they spend every last cent so they don't get cut back. So it's actually a sign of an organisation working responsibly. So well done. But is there any questions on the report or any queries from anyone at this stage? Not, would somebody like to move that the recommendations? Moved by Jeremy, seconded by Lyndall. If there's no further questions, and look, there's been a lot of work, and so well done the staff that have worked pretty tirelessly to get us there. It's always quite an onerous job, and the fact is we will start off not in deficit, but which helps us going forward to the next year. So I will put the recommendations. All in favour will say aye. Aye. Against, no. Carried. Right, we will move to item 2, which is the delegate selection for the Great South AGM. 109. Well, this annual meeting is actually while I'm on leave, so apart from any comments I might want to make on the reports, we do need to elect the delegates to attend. Lyndall.
Yeah, Chair, I just wondered the human file is available and I'm to attend. I would suggest that you do that.
On that basis, I'm happy to, you're moving as the delegate, I'll be happy to second that. Any further nominations? I'm not hearing any. I'll put the resolution. All in favour?
Can I have a suggestion that the proxy guidance is, God forbid, what we have Mr. Jeremy on Monday and he is not available to attend, that you have the delegate and a proxy.
Okay, that's good.
I'd just like to take us back to item recommendation 1 and 2, that we receive the Great South annual report, that we confirm our position on adoption of the annual report.
Right.
To include that in the 3.
Probably do that as we'll come back to that word. So, are you available, Lyndall?
I can be if it's an emergency.
So it's an emergency. And I'm sure we can have other people sitting there, they're just not voting delegate. So,
On Monday,
it's 31st, I think.
No, 30th.
Oh, no, 30. Yeah. So, but Lyndall,
Well, yeah.
Well, we've got Southport that day.
Right,
It's moving.
yeah, that's the 31st, yeah.
so the motion is that it's,
Are you doing all 3 at once? to receive the report, confirm the position and to nominate the representative who are going, who will be
Yes, I think we can do that. Yep.
Nick Fail, first and foremost, with a backup of Ludlow, Gibson,
So we're moving secondly, those last.
yes.
Well,
Are we going to get
Jeremy
that?
and Lyndall both came down with COVID, you could well be the man. So, it's just making sure, but
Councillor Gibson. Councillor Gibson. No matter what.
Linda, are you moving the three?
He's
No,
my,
I'm only moving the nomination.
Okay,
it's me plus
we'll do
one.
them separately then.
Recommendation 3.
right, so that's recommendation 3, which is that Councillor McPhail is the first cab off the rank, failing that it's actually now Ellison. Did we move on second for both those?
Linda has moved and you have seconded
No,
for
second.
that one.
I think, are we happy to include that in their motion? I think probably are.
All recommendations as one motion.
I thought we might need to discuss the other two first. Then.
So this is item 3, which is, initially it was Jeremy, but it's now also including Alison as proxy.
So just for clarity, it's just recommendation 3.
Just at this stage, so if this is just recommendation 3, all in favour will say aye. Against, no, carried. We'll now go back to 1 and 2, and Lyndall, you would like to make a comment?
No, not necessarily. I just thought that somebody might want to.
Sure, be hearing on you.
It's not me or them.
Peter?
Yes, Chairman, can we make a comment on the report from Great South?
Yes.
Okay, that's appropriate. I just want to mention, it's been in the media quite a bit over the last month about the New Zealand Functional Foods Processing Plant moving Canterbury, isn't it? There's been various commentary around that, quite negative on my head. I just want to make a comment myself, and this, like Morris said, could be a bit controversial. But we've got to remember that Great South, the way it was set up with the Southern Development, Regional Development Agency, pivoted back to business opportunity focus away from community focus. So some of those people that might be angry about that decision probably put in place that focus around commercial focus. And that's what happens when you move away from that community, those community values being among your business. So probably didn't make that point very well, but what I'm trying to say is those things were set up, they did their job. So it might spark some other comments.
I've probably got a different view on that. I mean, the Great South is the predecessor of Venture South, and it was there before. And probably not a lot around the room realise that our funding is for the core funding of the organisation, whereas you've got ICC and SCC who purchase services from them. And they actually do cover that whole range of community stuff. Mm-hmm. So it's I think it was more the length of time and energy that went into the functional foods, and in the end, it probably wasn't. In hindsight, I think the announcement could have been handled a little bit better. But after 10 years in the making, to either have something going ahead or not, with other competitors already grabbing that space, it was disappointing. But at the end, I had a brief from Ian Collier. And I said, look, yeah, understand the situation. At least it's going ahead in the South Island, and the ability for people to contribute. They're still working through that shareholding and whether they can leverage some more advantage to Southland. But I think there was people who've been involved for a long time, and there was a bit of reaction. But actually, this is Southland's development agency, and I think it's unfortunate when people were attacking the chair or attacking the organisation. It's always learnings, but overall, I believe it serves us well. It's got much better structure than it had predecessor, and they can cover a whole range of things. But the funding sort of has to come with those ambitions. Eric,
Well, as a past director of functional foods, I think it would be appropriate if there was some sort of a review on how the whole thing was handled and what actually happened. I think that's a point that we need to make to them. There's quite a, the delays to me were a concern. And yeah, as you said, that some of that space for the product has now been taken over by other people because of the prevarication around the whole process. And I think a review of the process would not be unhelpful.
we can carry that forward, possibly a proxy can. So we'll also got a stakeholders meeting on Friday morning. I'm not sure that there'll be an opportunity for that or not. But that's all good.
Inquiring if you'd like me to comment on the actual report.
Yes, that would be good. Yep.
So we don't have vast amounts of information other than what we're able to read here and read that comes through. So in summary, we've got an organisation whose income went up 2% and whose expenditure went up 15%. What would be very helpful for the delegates perhaps to suggest to Great South, if I could be as brave to say, it would be good if the report had the results against the plan. Because it's very hard for us to judge. It'd be good if it said this was the budget and this is the actual result, as we do and as other local government organisations do. That would be, it's not a criticism, it's a suggestion to help shareholders who are reading these reports. The result was still a positive result, and I'm sure in a very difficult circumstance. The balance sheet is the same, it's $400,000 better, so there is no concern about that. It's just an observation for us as shareholders.
No, that's a good point. Robert, you've got a question?
Involved shareholders and also some other insiders, perhaps you could say. These things don't just happen over one day, they happen over time. Have we been keeping a close enough eye, and have we been sharing the information that we've been about some of these things as they unfolded? So, for example, the oat milk issue, if we say it's 10 years in the making, we must have been getting interim reports and we must have had intelligence about that. Are we, given that we do invest, are we paying enough attention and speaking out at appropriate times? Do you think where we find that it's not really aligning with what we propose?
I think that this is an evolving organisation. You've got stakeholders group that is now getting regular reports. That probably wasn't happening as well as it could have in the past. So it is on a journey. I can see considerable improvements in some areas, but I'm not going to slag off the organisation in public. I think we offer positive suggestions for improvement in the future, and that's actually what Tanya is saying, because the balance sheet and how our funding spent's not as clear as it perhaps could be. And I think for any investor, it's really good to be able to see where your investment went and what the result was. So it's that can be passed on, but I'm aware that several council meetings, they've had a bit of a beat up, and I think you've also got to look at the positive, because there's a lot of positive stuff that the organisation does. And like I say, there's always room for improvement.
Can I just back that up? I totally agree with Mr. Chairman. They have had a bit of a hard time. It's an organisation.
Any further comment on the report before we move items 1 and 2 to recommendation?
Could I ask Tony if you want to write something down and just ask, you know, we want to make comment.
We just have to confirm that we support the adoption of the annual report for the delegates.
Right, we move around to seconded for that. So moved by Jeremy, seconded by John. Any further discussion? If not, I will put the motion. All in favour, say aye. Aye. Thanks, no. Carry. Right, we'll move to item 3, page 236, which is Great South letter of expectation. You like to comment on Rachel? I'm aware of it, sure we've read it, but
Yeah, the last item was looking back over the last year, and this is the opposite, Great South looking forward. We're very much at the start of a process here, so those of you who've been around the table for a long time will recall all the individual councils contribute to a letter of expectation, which goes through to Great South, and then from that they develop up a statement of intent, which also comes back to us for further input. So we're at that very beginning point where we're considering our own input into the letter of expectation. As the previous item indicated, we're a small shareholder, so 0.17%, and our funding goes to core funding for Great South, and there's core funding and contract funding. So the core funding is solely around keeping business going, and for that reason, we tend to just focus on the priority of regional development. You'll be aware that we have been in discussions with Great South over the last few months, just to ensure that our responsibilities aren't overlapping and that we're giving the ratepayers of the region the best service possible. So the letter highlights, I guess, the fact that there's still ongoing conversations around science and research in particular, and that we're working through that. We have the Chief Executive from Great South online for you next Tuesday to talk through the core funding and where that's at for the coming years. So you'll get an opportunity to take the chance to interact on that at that point. So the recommendation is to consider the draft letter and to confirm that you're happy to go through to the overall letter of expectation.
questions? Wonderful.
Yeah, thanks, Chairman. Appreciate the commentary around the science and research, because I think that duplication's foolish, to say the least. But I wonder if we should make explicit reference to the regional spatial plan work that's ahead of us as well. Because the TAs and ourselves are all going to have to be working together on that, and it would be equally foolish for Great South not to be considering that region-wide spatial planning beast that it will be.
No, I think that's a good point, Linda. It's one of the conversations we've started is let's not double up, and we have to have good transparency. Eric.
Yeah, I know that Great South have been doing a lot of work on climate change footprint for Southland, and I'm just wondering about duplication and who actually speaks for Southland, this Environment Southland or Great South, and what's the relationship between the activities of both in relation to that? I think we need to be singing off the same song sheet if we're going to be making, and I just don't know what the answer to that question is.
Well, there's been pretty clear direction been given from the Mineral Forum back to Great South that Environment Southland is leading that, so it's lead and support, and because that was a concern that parallel work was going on, and you don't want to waste resources, so that has been quite a clear message. Morris.
Further to that, it has been something that's puzzled me, and I haven't actually talked to Phil about it. I probably should have before now, but it's come up. And it is, perhaps there's an opportunity for Great South to have a representative on the regional climate change group. We really discussed it before, but they are certainly active in that area, and rather than telling them to, to butt out, and it's our job, well, perhaps we should attempt to bring them in.
Bill.
Yeah, Chair, just on that one, it's a good idea, and we've been considering how to appropriately accommodate the views of other stakeholders above and beyond the 4 local government entities in Southland. And as we develop the the regional strategy moving forward and the subsequent piece of work that accompanies it, the framework for action, we envisage the need to convene probably a working entity which expands beyond the 4 local government entities and then starts to include some of these other regional stakeholders in the climate change response space. So certainly it's been given some thought. We just haven't yet quite consolidated or confirmed the best way to do that and to get those stakeholders on board with that journey.
No, that's good. Peter?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I'd just like to support that. And of course, Great South have been doing a huge amount of work on climate change for a very long time, well before this council even started talking about it in a serious note. So maybe their technical expertise could be incorporated sooner rather than later within that regional group. So just a suggestion.
Yes, like a cell story. If everybody's sharing the information, everybody's in the tent, you're not getting parallel work going on at expense to everybody. So it's, this is something that encompasses the whole region and a whole lot of entities. So I'm sure Phil will report back in time when they've had these conversations. Any further questions on the letter of intent? John?
Just a potentially spelling mistake in last paragraph.
So I need to highlight that, sorry.
You're away to go.
They're waiting on Lyndall Price.
Actually, somebody else in mind.
Apart from that small modification, do we have any further questions or comments? If not, we'll ask somebody move and second the acceptance of the letter of intent.
No,
Expectation. Moved by Lyndall, seconded by Paul. Any further comment? I will put the motion. All in favour will say aye. Aye. Yes, no. Carried. Right. We need to sign that. We'll do it. I guess we're back here. We will move to next on the urgent business. I'm not aware of any this morning, this afternoon rather, and that will end the public part of the meeting today. And I'll ask all the reasons to go into public excluded.
The motion is that in accordance with section 48(1) of the Local Government Official Information and Meetings Act 1987, and the particular interest protected by section 6 or section 7 of that act, the public be excluded from the following parts of the proceedings of this meeting. Confirmation of the public excluded minutes from the 27 September council meeting under section 7.2J, and also for item 4, Southport New Zealand Limited AGM matters to be voted on under section 7.2CI, 7.2H and 7.2I.
Thanks. Having heard the reasons, would somebody like to move us into public excluded? Moved by Jeremy, seconded by Phil. All in favour will say aye. Aye. Against no, carried. Okay, first care box the ring is the confirmation